Hey everybody, Randy Patterson here with Boomerocity, and you've heard this a lot from me, but you can write me and tell me I was lying if this doesn't turn out to be true, okay? First of all, you know how I always like to turn you on to artists who I think you may not have heard of before. And I especially love turning you on to blues artists you may not have heard before. But I really, really, really love turning you on to an artist who are prodigies at their craft. And that's who this interview is with. It's with Chris Buck of the band Cardinal Black. They're out of the UK. And I will say this, you put his name right up there ahead. I'm telling you ahead of time. You can credit me for it later. He's up there with Joe Bonamassa. He's up there with Slash. He's up there with Isabel. You go on, and these guys know him. These guys have heard of him. He has played with these guys. He is that, not just good, he is that phenomenal. I'll put it right on record here, I am now going to be a lifelong fan, meaning the life of this band, even though I'm just now learning of them. I am a fan and will be a fan until you throw dirt on my grave. So this is a fun interview. He's a very young man. He's 34 years old. He's younger than my daughter. But man, is this guy, mature beyond his years, talented to the stratosphere, and got his head screwed on straight. And he's fun to talk to, humorous, and knows how to share his story, and it's a great story. So while you're listening to it, I'd like to ask you to do three things that I always ask you to do. Hit like. If you're not already a subscriber, please subscribe. Neither are going to cost you anything. And please share this interview with those you know who love great music, love great guitar work, love great songs, and love the blues. Please do that. Your friends will thank you and love you forever for it. So without any further ado, here is my first of what I sincerely hope will be the many more interviews to come in the coming years with Chris Buck of Cardinal Black. Until next time, this is Randy Patterson. Take care.
Hey.
Hello, Chris. How you doing?
I'm very good, thank you. That's an amazing background you have.
I thought you might like that. So not that you would be biased or anything, but
no, not at all, not at all. I feel like I've spent the last 6 months looking at that night and day for some reason or another. So yes, very familiar territory.
I bet. Well, it's a great album, so I'm glad we get to talk. And where are you clicking in from?
Bristol, UK. So about 2 hours west of London. So
okay.
Yeah. Whereabouts are you?
Well, there was this little band that you may have heard of from the UK called the Beatles, little garage band cover
once
band.
Or twice, yeah.
And there was a line in one of their songs that says, down at the Smoky Mountains, way down south. That's where I am. I'm in the Smoky Mountains. So.
Oh, amazing. Every time I mention his name to an American, they've never heard of him, but there's a travel writer called Bill Bryson, who
I've heard of him.
From Des Moines, Iowa, originally, but has kind of written extensively about moving to the UK and then his experience moving back to the US almost as a foreigner to your lands, I guess, despite being from Des Moines. But he wrote an amazing book about the kind of Smoky Mountains and the Appalachian Trail, and kind of doing that I think he did the Appalachian Trail pretty much in its entirety. So I've kind of obviously never been there, but feel like I've read a lot about it at the very least. So.
Well, you need to come sometime. There's a great little blues group in Knoxville, Tennessee, which is in East Tennessee, about an hour from where I live, and they bring people in as they're passing through and such. So maybe you could do a drop-in show or something, maybe at the Open Chord in Knoxville. So.
Oh, that'd be very cool. We're kind of driving roughly in your neck of the woods in August. We'll be driving from Nashville down to Atlanta, so I guess that's. Kind of loosely in the direction of Knoxville, but turns out it's quite a big country you have.
Yeah, it is. The map can be a little deceptive, but
absolutely.
I did look at your itinerary, and I'm trying to think ahead a little bit. I'm a caregiver to my dad, so I got to schedule my time and such. So
Yeah, yeah.
I saw you're going to be at the basement in Nashville, and then you're going
Mm.
to be in uh, Atlanta too, I
Yeah,
believe, wasn't it?
center
Yeah,
stage is the day after Nashville. So
yeah, yeah,
that's one of the more palatable drives, to be honest. I think it's about, I don't know, 4 or 5 hours. The day after Atlanta, we have a day off, but we've got to drive from Atlanta to Austin. So about
yeah.
16 hours, 1,000 miles, give or take. So yeah, there's a
Yeah.
lot of driving, but
Well,
yeah, it'd be good fun.
yeah. Well, I lived in Texas. I'm familiar with Austin. You got Jimmy Vaughn that lives near there, and maybe he'll be
Oh, awesome.
around. You
Yeah,
can
yeah,
drop
yeah.
in on you.
Oh
So,
man, absolutely,
but
absolutely. Well, yeah, big fan of his, needless to say, and his brother.
yeah, yeah. Well, I was at his brother's funeral, believe it or not, because
Oh, no way.
I, I was born here in Tennessee, but I, part of my so-called adult career was in the Dallas area, and I lived there when
Right,
he
okay.
died, and so I dropped in on the funeral. I walked up just as Stevie Wonder, Bonnie Raitt, and Jackson Brown were singing "Amazing Grace" a
Oh, no
cappella.
way.
That
I'd
was it. Still gives me chills to think about it, but
imagine. Oh,
it's
it's
he
incredible.
was an amazing talent, as is his brother. So.
It's a shame he died when he did, really, because he'd kind of got it together again. He'd been through his demons and seemed to have exercised those for the most part, and seemed to have it
Yeah,
together again. When he died. So yeah, great shame.
absolutely. Well, man, I love your album. I love your
Mhm.
sound. I love your story. I read up on you a bit, and golly, what I mean, this is kind of like a storybook thing, in my opinion. But for those who aren't familiar with you and the band, tell viewers a little bit about yourself and the formation of the band, when you got into playing guitar, all that kind of thing.
Yeah, I mean, we kind of for a little while we were going under the tagline "the oldest new band in the world" because it was a little bit of a paradox. So I guess technically speaking, Cardinal Black launched about 4 years ago to the day. Actually, May 2021
Wow.
was when we unveiled ourselves to the world. We've kind of been rehearsing and writing under the kind of the darkness of COVID, as it was really, and social distancing and all that kind of stuff. How, in retrospect, how much of the stuff that we were kind of writing and rehearsing was actually legal at that point, I don't know. We probably should have been at least a couple more meters apart than we actually were. But yeah, we used COVID as a little bit of a kind of excuse, really, to just write and rehearse. But that's not really referencing this shared history that we have, which goes back, I don't know, 10 plus years maybe.
Wow.
Funnily enough, we're playing a show, we're doing a warm-up show for the US, or the North American tour, I should say, at the Troubadour in London. And it only dawned on me the other day, actually looking into it, that the last time we played the Troubadour was in about 2009, maybe, which was albeit under a different name, but essentially the same band. So we had about a period then of 10 years in between that band and Cardinal Black, where we did weddings, we did funerals, we did bar mitzvahs, as the saying goes. We would celebrate any religion for the right price, and yeah, we did that for about 10 years, and then COVID happened and kind of gave everyone a chance to kind of just, I don't know, reset, I guess, and refocus and kind of taking stuff that they wanted to do. And I think it had been hanging over our heads for a while, that we had a lot of material that we'd written back in the day, as it were, and a lot of new material that was kind of waiting to get out. So yeah, it kind of felt like the timing was right. And yeah, fast forward here 4 years, and here we are.
Wow. Wow. Well, in reading up on you, Chris, I'm stunned, not surprised, but I'm impressed, I guess, not stunned, impressed at the who has given you accolades. I mean, little dudes like Slash and Jason Isbell and Peter Frampton and Joe Bonamassa, Miles Kennedy.
Yeah.
I mean, on and on and on. I mean, you're getting all the right kind of attention. How did they hear about you?
It's honestly, I mean, kind of hearing those names and seeing the stuff that they've been kind enough to say about the band or myself will never cease to be surreal. There's a couple of names there in particular which were absolute heroes of mine growing up. So to the fact that they know who I am or know who the band is, yet alone like what we do, is utter madness. But I mean, in Slash's case, it was the band that I was kind of referencing then, going back 10 years or so. We had a manager very early on, a guy called Alan Niven, who'd been Guns N' Roses manager very early in their career, taking them from being a Sunset Strip band through to doing Wembley Stadium, kind of huge
Hmm.
stadium filling band, and is still on very good terms with most of the guys in Guns N' Roses. And unbeknownst to me, it kind of been drip feeding videos and clips and recordings of me playing to Slash. And that all culminated then in about 2012, maybe. I had a phone call off Slash out of the blue. And I genuinely thought it was one of my mates taking the proverbial, kind of winding me up. And lo and behold, it was the actual Slash. And he
Wow.
invited me up to play with him in Birmingham in the UK, and we've kind of been kind of friends ever since. He's been incredibly generous with his time and his compliments, and stuff that he's been kind enough to say. He wrote a letter of recommendation for our US visa application last year. He got us into the Troubadour in Los Angeles as well. Because unsurprisingly, they were very quick to answer his email, more so than mine. So Slash is kind of very lucky to call Slash a mate at this point. But social media undoubtedly has been the kind of the way in which a lot of these guys have discovered me. Jason Isbell, I think, came across me on Instagram. I think Peter Frampton maybe stumbled across us on Instagram as well. So social media, as much as it has its detractors, has made the world a much smaller place in that respect, and kind of done away with some gatekeepers, and consequently you have people like Miles Kennedy and Peter Frampton and Jason Isbell kind of stumbling across you online when they might not have otherwise. So yeah.
Very cool. Well, one thing I could say about you, Chris, is I I'm not a musician. I can't imagine what it
Neither
must
am
be
I. Don't
like.
worry.
Oh, don't sell yourself so short. But I could probably be a poser, but I can't play. But the thing that gets me is there's a lot of great talent out there, a lot of great musicians that I think, wow, these people are, I've seen them open for big names. But then when it comes right down to it, as great as a musician as they are, they're just a cover band on steroids because they're not writing their own music. Or if they are, it's kind of so-so. And I'm rooting for them. I want them to succeed. But one thing that really impressed me about you and Cardinal Black is the quality of not just the musicianship, obviously, but the quality of the songwriting, the
Oh,
quality of
thank
the
you.
recording. And I mean, that bodes well for you, in my opinion, as a fan, as a listener, not as a professional. But
Oh, thank you. That's very kind of you. And strangely, I think compliments like that, in my mind at the very least, are worth a lot more than compliments about the musicianship. Because I guess,
Mhm.
we've been doing this a long time. Whether professionally or not. Like I said, we were a wedding band for a very long time, so we've kind of done that. We've paid our dues in that respect, but and consequently had a lot of very nice compliments about our musicianship. I know I can play guitar a little bit. I know Tom can sing a little bit, but we do put such a focus on the songwriting, and that was a very conscious decision from the outset of Cardinal Black, really, that because of the stuff that I'd done prior, because of the little bit of a following that I'd amassed on YouTube and social media, there could have been a temptation to just kind of lean into that and go very much for the guitar angle and kind of try and blow people's heads off, with guitar solos left, right, and center. And as much as, don't get me wrong, I don't get kind of cut short on the guitar solos particularly. It was a very conscious decision that we're all fans of great songwriting. We all love songwriting. It's what we take most pleasure in as a band, and trying to do that and do that to a high standard is what we've always aspired to. So yeah, thank you. That's very, very sweet of you to say that. And far be it from me to say, but I am proud of this record. I think it's a step on from the first record. The first record, I think, for me at the very least, I think it was our manager said it to us recently, kind of felt like a greatest hits collection of songs that nobody had ever heard because of its nature, because of we'd written it over a period of about 12 years. There were a couple of very old tracks on that record. There were a couple of very new tracks, and consequently trying to make them sit together on a 12-inch vinyl, and sound like a cohesive, coherent record was
Mhm.
always going to be a little bit tricky because it felt like a collection of greatest hits that nobody had heard.
Mhm.
Whereas going into the writing process for the second album and having a clean slate, having this blank canvas of, right, let's start from scratch, write something that sits together well as a record, and us, and the songs that we're proud of. Yeah, was strangely liberating. As much as that was initially terrifying, you finish your round of touring for the first record, when we'd been all over the place with that record. You finish that and you're creatively and emotionally spent, and the last thing that you want to do is then go and jump into a small room with the three or four guys that you've spent the last 2 years with, pretty much incessantly. But yeah, it actually turned into quite a liberating experience just to be able to jump back into a room and write without confines and try and make something that
Mhm.
we're proud of, which I think we've done. So thank you. That's very sweet of you.
Well, one thing I want to share with you, a quick story that I think will lend itself to this very subject is when I first launched Boomerocity over 16 years ago, one of the first interviews I did was face to face with Sam Andrew, who was one of the guitarists in Big Brother and the Holding Company, Janis
Yeah, of course. Yeah, yeah.
Joplin's first
Yeah, yeah,
band.
absolutely.
And he shared something with me that I didn't connect with this subject that you and I were just talking about. But he said, Randy, when we were starting out, he said we were inventing this stuff. We were inventing the sound. He goes, now you've got schools that are cranking out 500 graduates a year who can do Hendrix as well, if not better than Hendrix.
Yeah, yeah.
And so, it dawned on me as you were talking that that is the case. You can find anybody to play, so to speak, and God, what I would give to be able to play your mistakes. But and that talent can stand on its own, but it can only carry you so far. Going back to the songwriting and the quality of it, that's what takes you up to the next levels, plural, and
Yeah.
garners a lot of attention. And you're doing that, and again, my hat's off to you on that. So,
Oh, thank you. You hit the nail on the head. It's songs that transcend. It's songs that, take bands to another level or put them in the wider consciousness because it's
mhm,
okay, there are moments of virtuosity, that people connect with, but ultimately those moments of virtuosity are absolutely nothing without the vehicle of a great song, and
mhm, mhm,
pretty much all of our favorite moments, whether it's great vocal moments, whether it's great guitar moments, any virtuosic moments, the only reason that we know about those in the first place is that more often than not, they are within the context of a great song or a great piece of writing. And I wouldn't put ourselves in that category. That's what we're aspiring to. But it's like I said, that's always been at the heart of Cardinal Black is to try and write great songs first, or try and write interesting
mhm.
songs that people connect with. And if there are moments of there's a great vocal moment or there's a great guitar moment, then more power to it. But it's not the only
Right.
reason that you have to listen.
Right. Well, I think what you're doing too is you're bridging the gap because you're getting old people like me. I'm going to be turning 66 in October, and we grew up with that kind of sound, but you're bringing in a freshness to our old sound and adding
Thank you.
things to it, and you're bringing your generation and those behind you to it. I mean, you're a little younger than my daughter, but that's what I think is you're creating instant agelessness with your sound, and
Oh, thank
I
you.
think that's it's going to give it legs.
Oh, thank you. I mean, I hope you're right. It's interesting. I mean, I'm increasingly feeling like a dinosaur. At the ripe old age of 34. It's one of the downsides of living relatively near to a university is that I kind of feel young at heart, and then you bump into what look like kids in the street who are old enough to drive, apparently. So I'm increasingly feeling my age, but I guess it's we kind of referenced social media earlier, and it is testament to the reach of social media that it's made the world a much smaller place. And obviously, we came over to the US last summer with zero expectation really of whether anyone would want to actually see us. And lo and behold, the Basement East in Nashville sold out and the Troubadour in LA sold out, and it's paved the way for us coming back this year. But it was so interesting just to look out and as much as I try and keep myself in the moment and try and focus solely on the music, there is some strange kind of marketing part of my brain that at some point throughout the show will look out and try and take in a brief sense of the demographic of the audience. So
Yeah,
like
yeah.
who are our audience? Where have these people come from? And it's so diverse. It's young kids who are kind of getting into the guitar, for the first time, and it's older guys. It's so wide ranging. I mean, there's only so much that you can kind of base your Spotify numbers from, and look at the kind of age
Yeah.
range and the kind of gender split and all this kind of stuff. But ultimately, when you play a show, you see that it's pretty much everyone, which is great. It's cool, because it's I think it is by dint of the influences that we have and the type of music that we are trying to create. I think it is pretty ageless. It's pretty timeless in that there's a lot of older influences, but at the same time there's a lot of newer influences in there, and consequently you get a little bit of an amalgam. So
That's
yeah,
right.
that's cool. Thank you.
How long did this album take you to make? Once you decided that you're
Oh
going to
man.
put it all
Yeah.
together?
I mean, at this point, it feels like an absolute eternity, because it's been finished a while, and again, to kind of reference our US shows last year, that the experience that we had over there and the success of those shows kind of put a little bit of a spanner in the works, as it were, in terms of our release schedule for the record. That we kind of were working on the assumption that, much like the first record, we would probably self-release the album. And then, because of the success of those shows, we had quite a bit of interest from US record labels and US agencies. So we signed to WME. We ended up signing to 30 Tigers, a label based in Nashville, who were
Hmm.
releasing the record, which all of which was amazing and undoubtedly to the betterment of the record. But obviously, you then have to fall in with their schedules. So
Right.
this record was initially, we'd penned it for release in late 2024, kind of probably
Hmm.
October kind of time, and obviously it's going to be May, 2025 before it actually comes out. So it feels like an old record to us at this point. So
Yeah.
we're already starting to kind of put together the bare bones of the third record. But the actual process of writing and recording it was pretty quick, actually. We, like I said, it was a bizarrely liberating experience to come off the back of the first record and be presented with a clean slate. And
Mhm.
as daunting as that was initially, myself and Tom are pretty prolific when we do start writing. So we went on me and Tom locked ourselves away and went on a nice little romantic getaway to a cottage in the middle of nowhere, which was totally coincidentally happened to be attached to a vineyard. As much as I may try and explain that away as coincidence, my wife has not believed me there. Um, yeah, myself and Tom, when we kind of really throw ourselves into it, do write pretty quickly. So I guess the entirety of the process of writing the record probably took about 2, 3 months, maybe. There was quite a few rehearsal sessions then of just demoing tracks, different guises, different tempos, different feels. But again, the actual recording process of the record was split over 2 sessions. We recorded at the studio in Switzerland, in just outside Zurich, and we actually, funny story. The first session was straight off the back of a little kind of a run of dates that we'd done in Norway. And I mean, we slightly naively, if anywhere on earth can make Switzerland look cheaper to live in, it's Norway. So yeah, for all of the reputation Switzerland has for being expensive, it comparatively to Norway looks pretty reasonable. But we'd been in Norway, and we were trying to fly straight from Norway to Switzerland to start the recording the record. And we figured it, in our infinite wisdom, we figured that it would be easier, cheaper, and faster to fly back to the UK and then out to Switzerland the next day, as opposed to getting a direct flight from Norway to Switzerland, which in hindsight was a terrible idea because our flight was delayed. We arrived back in the UK to our van having broken down on the way to pick us up. So it was what should have been quite a leisurely turnaround time, and get back to the hotel, chill, get out to Switzerland in good time the next morning. Turned into this, yeah, somewhat kind of hairy experience of nearly missing
Oh man.
flights. So we arrived in Switzerland feeling very ill prepared. But the first session lasted about a week, and then we went back out for about a fortnight. Then in January of 2024, that was the first session was in October of 2023. Second session was in January of 2024, and then there were just a couple of little sessions to, additional vocal recordings,
Hmm.
bagpipes. Strangely, there's bagpipes on the first track of the record. So yeah, it was just a couple of scattered sessions throughout, but yeah, the actual bare bones of the record took shape very quickly. I think it's testament to how much stuff we've done live as a band that, when we get into the studio, again, much like the writing process, we're pretty quick. It's kind of, press go and away we go, and 3, 4 takes of a track maybe, and we're pretty happy with what we've got. So yeah, it was pretty seamless.
Were there any surprises as you were putting this thing together?
Yeah. I mean, I referenced bagpipes then. That was one of the more obvious ones. So So the first track on the record was a song called Ride Home, which we had a pretty good idea of how it should sound when we went into the sessions, but it was one of the tracks that still had a little bit of a question mark over it in terms of, how should this sound? What's the feel of it? Does it have a place on the record? It felt quite markedly different to all of the other music. So we kind of went in with it as a little bit of a kind of, oh, well, that's on the back burner. That's a plan B if we feel like we're short of a song. And lo and behold, it turned into the first track of the record. But we were recording it, and it felt like it needed something. It was so unusual, relative to the rest of the songs on the record, that it felt like it needed an outside influence. It felt like it needed an unusual instrument. And we were in Switzerland, so there were a couple of brief conversations about, well, are there any traditional Swiss instruments? So we very quickly considered and abandoned the idea of the Swiss Alp horn, which our producer Cyril suggested, which wasn't quite the vibe that we were going for. But bagpipes were
Those,
mentioned.
those things are pretty long too, aren't they?
I don't think we would have physically fitted one in the studio, never mind
Yeah.
being able to record it. But I doubt there were any shortage of Alphorn players knocking around Zurich. But yeah, bagpipes were suggested. So, which at the time, to be honest, slightly inebriated after a day in the studio. The beauty of Power Play Studios, the studio we recorded, or one of the great things about Power Play, is that it's residential. So you finish recording, you take the one flight of stairs upstairs, and you're kind of in where you're living. In essence, you've got a pool table, you've got a bar, you've got TV, you've got your VR headsets to play a bit of VR golf, whatever you want to do to unwind after a day in the studio. So we were upstairs playing pool, a little bit worse for wear after a day recording, and bagpipes were suggested. So we thought, well, we don't know. Do we know any bagpipe players? Who the hell could play bagpipes? And pretty much the only person that any of us could think of was a guy called Alistair Campbell, who is not known widely for his bagpipe playing, but we knew he played bagpipes. He was during the kind of Tony Blair government in the UK back in the kind of late 90s, early 2000s. He was the communications director. And he now is part of a podcast over here, a massive podcast. I think it's the biggest in the UK, called The Rest is Politics. And we're all absolute politics losers, so we just listen to politics podcasts in the back of the van when we're on tour, because that's more exciting than films or music. And he referenced in the podcast that he played bagpipes. So a little bit worse for wear, I messaged him on Instagram saying, sorry, this is a message out of the blue, but I don't suppose you want to play bagpipes on a rock band's album. And lo and behold, he got straight back to us saying, yep, when and where. So fast forward, it took a couple of months to kind of nail down because he's so busy. But we found ourselves in a studio in North London with Alistair Campbell, who, for all of his many great traits, is slightly a polarizing figure because of, what that era of government, but on both sides of the pond, is associated with. We found ourselves in the studio with Alistair Campbell, and for us, at the very least, it was going to be a little bit of a kind of an Easter egg for anyone who cared to read the liner notes on the records. Bagpipes, Alistair Campbell. How many people would put that together with the fact that was, the Alistair Campbell? And the next thing we know, he's live streaming on Instagram from the studio. So it wasn't so much of an Easter egg, so much as a terribly kept secret. So I mean, the attention that we've received in the subsequent days was quite intense. I've never been called a war criminal before, but I have now. So it was intense to say the least. But that's probably the biggest surprise on the record, that we have Alistair Campbell playing bagpipes on it. So by comparison, everything else was pretty mundane, really.
I love it. That's a cool story. Which song on the album would you point to as a calling card, especially with people here in the States that are, you're not a household name yet. I hope you become one. So what would you point to? What would you point to? Which song on this album would you point to as a calling card for the rest of the record?
I think probably Morning Light. That's the track which, for me at the very least, kind of encapsulates where we are as a band at the moment. It's just a track that I felt particularly good about from the moment of its inception. Pretty much the moment we finished mixing it, I was kind of like, oh, that pretty much sums up where I feel we are as a band at the moment. Where we are as a band in terms of songwriting and our sound, and just everything about that track kind of feels like it represents us particularly well at this moment in time. So I hope other people like it as well.
Yeah, I know I do. What's on your radar for the rest of the year? I know you got this tour. You're coming over stateside. You'll be here, I know, at least towards the end of the summer and into the fall. and I'm hoping to catch one of those shows. But what else you got going on this year?
It's a busy year, so obviously the record comes out next week. We're doing an in-store tour around the UK for the week of its release to try and encourage a couple more sales. And then it's this North America then. So I'm conscious to say North America because technically we are making two very brief stops on the other side of the border in Canada. But then it's pretty much a US tour from that point onwards for pretty much the entirety of August, slightly into September. And then October is all around the UK and Ireland. And then November into December is all around Europe, or pretty much all around Europe. There's one or two glaring omissions, one or two glaring European countries that we're not going to, which we're looking to remedy early next year. So yeah, the rest of the year is going to be pretty full on. So if we don't dislike each other yet, we probably will come the end of the year because it's quite a lot of time to spend in a confined space with each other. So yeah. We'll see how we get on.
Well, maybe you can find a good counselor to work out the differences in rough spots. So
I think we'll need it. Come December, we'll probably need it. So no, I mean, joking aside, it's I guess it's kind of a testament to the fact that we've spent so much time together, in a covers band and now in Cardinal Black, that we know how to not get on each other's nerves. It's very rare that we'll have any tense moments in the band. I think it's, we know how to not push each other's buttons and live in each other's pockets, relatively speaking, without pissing each other off. So yeah, right. I don't think we're going to be doing the big kind of acrimonious split anytime soon. At least I hope not.
Good, because I want to hear a lot more from you guys. And like I said, once I started hearing the music, I jumped on the opportunity to talk with you, and I hope that. Hope we get to do a bunch more of these interviews in the future, in the years to come. And like I said, I hope to catch one of your stops here in the U.S. later on this summer and be able to shake hands with you. So
absolutely,
we'll try to make that happen.
I owe you a beer. Thank you very much, Randy. It's been a pleasure.
Well, hey, likewise. And stay safe, stay healthy, and we'll see you down the road.
Likewise. Take care, Randy. See you soon.
Take care. Bye-bye.